In this tutorial, we will discover the following findings: the importance of securing a network and the importance of domain name security extensions, also known as DNSSEC. The scope: we will perform a DNS spoof across a physical network in an attempt to hijack website traffic. The following tasks will be completed in this exercise. We will configure the Eticap DNS configuration file for the DNS redirection, start the Apache web service on the Linux Kali device, utilize Eticap to scan for a list of targets on a network, add the physical router and file server as targets for the DNS spoof, enable Arp Poisoning in Eticap, enable the DNS spoofing plugin for DNS replies in Eticap, begin the network sniffing, and then finally we will attempt to browse to www.whitehatdownunder.com from the file server. During a legitimate DNS query on behalf of a client or user attempting to access a website, the client would enter the website into their browser. The DNS query for that website request would then be issued to their DNS server or DNS device. The DNS server or DNS device would then resolve the DNS query, providing the IP address to the client or user in which the legitimate website would be accessed via their web browser. As we can see in this diagram, this is how a legitimate DNS request would take place. In the instance of a DNS spoof, the client would enter the website into their browser. The attacker would then intercept the DNS query. The attacker would then resolve the DNS query instead of the DNS server or DNS device, resolving the query providing a fake malicious IP address to the client or user in which the malicious website would then be accessed via their web browser. In this White Hat experiment, we'll be utilizing two virtual machines installed over Oracle VM VirtualBox and a physical router. The malicious device will be the Linux Kali device with an IP address of 192.168.1.17, and we will be utilizing the pre-installed toolsets of Eticap and Apache to initialize the attack. The client or victim device will be the Windows Server 2012 R2 file server named testfs01 on the coffee.local domain. The IP address of this device is 192.168.1.18, and we will be initiating a DNS spoof attack. The physical DNS device switch will be on the coffee.local domain. The IP address of this device is 192.168.1.1. The Linux Kali device will impersonate this physical device and intercept the DNS query from the client or the file server. To start off with, the test file server, we can see it has the IP address of 192.168.1.18. We can see that the Linux Kali device has an IP address of 192.168.1.17. Now to begin with, I'll start by running the root terminal. And I'll go back to the file server. I'll open in Explorer. And I'll show that the website does not exist at this point in time. So we'll time out and go to a public search, and I'll also show that White Hat Down Under does not exist at this time. Now moving forward, I will show the configured DNS file within the Linux Kali device. So we scroll to /etc /eticap /edit.dns. What I've done in this file is I've added the entries prematurely. I've added 2 host A records and 1 pointer or PTR record. whitehatdownunder.com, followed by a tab with the capital A, followed by a space with 192.168.1.17. On the second line, we have star.whitehatdownunder.com, followed by a tab with a capital A, followed by a space with 192.168.1.17. On the third line, we have www.whitehatdownunder.com, followed by a tab with the capitals PTR, followed by a space with 192.168.1.17. I'll now start the Apache service. Now if we go to the file server client and we go to the IP address, this will load up the Apache 2 default page. Yet still, if we scroll to whitehatdownunder or www.whitehatdownunder.com, the page cannot be displayed. Now I go back to the Linux Kali device and start Eticap. We do this by typing in Eticap space -G for goat. Now we ensure that the correct primary interface is selected and sniffing at startup is selected. Then we click the tick icon to accept this. Now we also kick off the additional search to scan for hosts. Now if we click the hosts file, or the host button, it comes up with a list of IP addresses with some MAC addresses attached to that. Now the first thing we need to do is add the default gateway as host 1, and then the target device, which is 192.168.1.18, as target 2. The first thing I will do though is stop the scan and the sniffing for the time being. So I'll add this device here, the default gateway or the router, as target 1. Then I will add the target device, which is 192.168.1.18, as target 2. The next thing I need to do is enable Arp Poisoning. We ensure this option here for sniff remote connections is enabled and we click OK. The next thing I need to do is enable the spoofing plugin or the Spoof plugin. By double clicking on it. Now the next thing I will do is start the sniffing again. As we can see from this log, this is started. But next, what I will do is I will exit Internet Explorer, and I have my settings set here to delete everything on browsing history. I will also need to clear the DNS cache to ensure that the old entry for White Hat Down Under, which was coming up as empty, disappears. And that's successfully flushed. Now I'll open Internet Explorer and go to the IP address again, and this loads up. Now I will access the website www.whitehatdownunder.com, and this brings up the Apache 2 Debian default page, the same one from 192.168.1.17. And if we look at this log here, we can see it says DNS spoof A, www.whitehatdownunder.com, spoof to 192.168.1.17.